in, last couple tournaments or whatever, just they're not that important. But Jason Day, someone forgot to tell him that, and I'm glad they did. He's been the guy from. He's been the one golfer I've singled out more than any other golfer this year, with the exception of Jordan Spieth. But I singled Jordan Spieth out after the things he did. I was singling Jason Day out before he did the things he did, winning the Barclays, winning the PGA Championship, one or two of the other wins he's had so far this season. Because I looked at all the statistics from the golf season, and there's only one name that comes up in every category, whether it be driving distance, driving accuracy, hit greens in regulation, putting, scrambling, scoring, every stat they keep track of on tour throughout the season. The one name that's literally in every single category has been Jason Day throughout the entire year. And I've followed him for, a couple years now leading up to this point. I knew he was one of the, premier up-and-coming next-gen / current-gen golfers who just had to get over that hurdle of winning his first major, and that's it. Breakout star. You're good to go. You got another Phil Mickelson here. You got another Jim Furyk. You got another Ernie Els. Another star in the PGA golf world that's gonna be a recognizable name and contend for majors. Just got to get that first one out of the way. Well, he finally did here at the PGA, and now he's still on a tear from it. So way to go, Jason Day. Congratulations. Keep it up, and hopefully at some point here within the next week or two, somebody in the world of sports media or professional golf or both will do something to bring some attention and awareness to the remainder of the PGA golf season that is still being played, and possibly can create some sort of interest and buzz and hype and just general giving a rip for the FedEx Cup here to finish the PGA season. All right, so there's your golf news. All right, maybe one more quickie here now, and then and then we'll get into some meat. All right, well, let's get you caught up then on your WNBA standings, as things have actually been decided a little bit more, or clear. There's a little more clarity since last week when we talked. We've actually got 6 teams who have clinched playoff berths. A few teams who are out of playoff contention. And I think it's pretty obvious who the last couple playoff teams are going to be as well. So let's go over that. All right, so out in the Eastern Conference, we've got the New York Liberty as the 1 seed. They have not clinched the number 1 seed yet, but it's all signs point that they will be the 1 seed in the East. So you got the New York Liberty 21-8. Then we've got the Chicago Sky and the Indiana Fever, both at 18-12, both having clinched playoff berths. All right, so then we'll move over to the West, where we've got the first place Minnesota Lynx at 20-10, who have clinched a playoff berth and most likely the Western Conference, but not 100% yet. We've also got the Phoenix Mercury at 18-13, who have clinched a playoff berth, and then the Tulsa Shock at 15-14, who have clinched a playoff berth. Now, out of contention for the playoffs would be the Connecticut Sun in the East and the Atlanta Dream in the East. And then out in the West, it appears that the San Antonio Stars are eliminated, but the Seattle Storm at 9-20 somehow are still in the mix. They could possibly surpass the 12-18 Los Angeles Sparks for the 4th and final playoff spot. That's how I'm taking it. And I'm pretty sure the Washington Mystics are pretty much guaranteed to be the 4th seed in the East as well. They're currently 16-13. So there you got, like I said, you got 6 teams already in your WNBA playoffs clinched and ready to go, just trying to determine those last 2 spots. Again, I believe there is approximately a week to a week and a half is all of regular season left, and then their playoffs will be starting here in the second half of the month of September, if you're a WNBA fan. So, there's your WNBA update. Man, we got a lot of stuff crossed off the list here in a short amount of time. All right. Well, it is time to dive into the meat here on Balls Deep Sports Talk this week. And as we've been doing here the last couple of weeks, I think we're going to combine a sport or two or even three here in this week's edition of The Meat. The primary topics we still need to discuss tonight would be tennis, the U.S. Open, professional baseball, Major League Baseball, final month of the season, and the NFL, professional football. Last preseason game tomorrow night. Man. So, all right, well, let's see. We had quite a bit of football talk, so we'll go with the baseball here, all right? And then maybe we'll throw in the football to give a little break in between football discussions, and then close the meet out with a little tennis before we squeeze in a final quickie or two and our Balls Deep thought of the day. Again, thanks for listening as always. I'm Scotty Ball, and you're listening to Balls Deep Sports Talk on WNLMradio.com. Also available on the Spreaker app, TuneIn app, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So, as I mentioned, we are in the final month of the baseball season. We've got about 4 or 5 weeks of games left, and then it will be the great October tradition known as Major League Baseball's postseason. Now, with the one thing that is, always happens this time of year in any sport is that you get fan bases of teams that, again, they're checking out. Their teams aren't competitive anymore, and when there's no reason to cheer for their team, they just kind of check out of the sport in general. I've never been one of those types of sports fans, but I completely understand where that average fan is coming from. But so that's where it's my job to still kind of try to reel you back in, be like, your teams and your guys ain't doing so hot, but like there's still good stuff going on. It's entertaining and it's interesting, and it's fun, check it out, give it a chance. So let's get you caught up on the Major League Baseball standings right now, and then maybe we'll go into a little bit of detail on my Minnesota Twins yet before we move on to other topics. But in the American League, where we always start, that American League East division race is awesomely entertaining right now. You've got 2 teams playing really, really good baseball. And they're both going to be in the playoffs. Whoever does not win the American League East will be one of the 2 wild cards, most likely, almost certainly, the number 1 seeded wild card. Currently, that would be the New York Yankees, who are trailing the first place Toronto Blue Jays by 1 game. The Blue Jays are 75-57. That's beautiful yin-yang symmetry there. And then the Yankees are 74-58. You got the Rays respectfully sticking around, playing at 500 there at 66-66. Speaking of symmetry. But then you've got the Orioles. Wow, they have lost 12 of their last 13 games last I checked, and that was all started by your Minnesota Twins, who went there on the road after getting their butts kicked in New York by the Yankees, like we always do. That's our daddy. And we swept them 4 games in Baltimore, and they were right there with us, neck and neck, side by side, for that second wildcard spot at the time. Now, like I said, they've lost 12 of their last 13. Last I looked, maybe it's 13 of the last 14 by now. And they're just spiraling horribly out of control to the extent that don't be surprised when the manager loses his job now at the end of the season, or right before the end of the season maybe too. Also look for maybe a few bigger names on that team to all of a sudden be on a trading block here in the off season. But so yeah, really, tough to watch if you're an Orioles fan these last couple weeks. And then you got the Red Sox, surprisingly enough, in the basement pretty much all year at 61-72. No one thought they were going to be great, but I at least thought that they would take turns, with the Rays and Orioles and Yanks and Blue Jays for last place. Like, I didn't think they'd just claim, exclusive sole ownership of it for pretty much the entire season, as they have. But then in the AL Central, you got the Kansas City Royals, who seem to just keep being able to acquire more quality players. Um, it's going to be really, really it will be heartbreaking, shocking, disappointing, and I think possibly the end of the run if the Kansas City Royals can't at least make it to the World Series again here this season. If they're a one and done playoff team, or if they lose in the ALCS, I could see them going through some rebuilding going into next season. Then they've just got so many big names and big contracts and things of that nature that this is their window and they're making their push the best they can, and that's what you should do, and I respect that. But then the push either succeeds or fails, and you move on accordingly. And like I said, it wouldn't surprise me. I'm not saying it's the right way to go about it, but it would not surprise me if, in the event of the Kansas City Royals having a poor showing this postseason, that you do see them move a lot of their bigger name people in the offseason. But they are still in first place in the AL Central and in the entire American League, as they have been all year. They are 80-51, having a remarkable season. And then in second place, you've got my and possibly your Minnesota Twins at 68-63. And that would put them one game behind the 69-62 Texas Rangers for the second and final wild card spot. And the Angels would be 2 games back. Or 3 games back. No, 2 games. I don't know. The Angels are 67-66. Rangers are 69-62. Rangers are currently holding the second and final wild card spot in the American League. But like I said, the Twins are only a game behind them, and the Angels are 2 to 3 games behind them. Don't look now, but the Indians are trying to flirt with respectability here before the end of the season. They have been playing winning baseball here for a couple weeks now, maybe even a month, dare I say, and they have gotten their record up to 3 games below 500. That doesn't sound the best, but when the second wild card spot is currently held by a team with a record of 69-62, and your team has 64 wins, and there's 5 weeks of games left, you're in it, okay? If you win your series, if you meatloaf, as the guys on K-Fan say, 9 to noon, if you meatloaf all of your series, where 2 out of 3 ain't bad, hence the reference. They're gonna flirt with that second spot, if they can continue to do that. I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying they won't. But worth keeping an eye on for at least a week or so. Good for them to, like I said, find a way to flirt with being respectable and relevant here before the season is done. And then, yes, back out west, like I said, we've got the Rangers in second place in the West, sitting in the second wild card spot at 69-62. Houston Astros have reclaimed that division with a 3-game lead. They are 73-60. The Angels still trying to stay in the hunt for that second wild card bid. They are 1 game above 500 at 67-66. They have been on a bit of a schneid recently as well. You're welcome, balls deep drinking game players. All right, so then we will go to the NL Central, and to nobody's surprise, if you've followed any baseball at any point this year, you know that the St. Louis Cardinals are the best team, period. They are still in first place, a full 40 games over 500 at 86-46. Unfreaking believable. Then in second place and in third place, respectively, you've got who are going to be the 2 wild card teams when it's all said and done. In the National League playoffs, you've got the Pittsburgh Pirates at 79-51 and the Chicago Cubs at 75-57. Kudos to Theo Epstein and everyone in the front office in Chicago, and the players as well, for making it happen. They're still the ones that got to get it done and execute. But the Chicago Cubs, much like the Minnesota Twins, but a little better actually, are ahead of schedule in their rebuilding process, and it is looking like they have done their due diligence in their rebuilding, and that it is going to pay off for them sometime in the very near future. So, like I said, you got three playoff teams are going to come out of the NL Central, and then the other two divisions, you're fighting for the division.